What's up, everyone? This is my year in wrestling 1994 part 2 video that you're watching right now. Thanks for watching. If you are watching, thank you. I'm going to talk about 94, WCW Spring Stampede, WCW Slamboree 94, and some ECW events that happened in 94. And I'm going to first thing I'm going to talk about is in 1994 I went to my first WCW house show in 94. I believe is in the winter of 94, maybe January or February or March. I remember it was really cold out, so it was probably January or February of 94. At the house show, I saw Triple H wrestle when he was in WCW. I can't remember who he wrestled. I really can't. It might have been Dustin Rhodes. I'm not sure. I saw Sting in the main event in a steel cage match against Ravishing Rick Rude. That was very awesome. I bought a couple things from the WCW house show that I still have. One was a Sting foam finger. WWF used to sell them in the 80s. The Hulkamania foam fingers. This was a Sting foam finger. Unfortunately, I don't have it anymore. It got thrown out because it started falling apart. A couple long time ago, probably 10 years ago, I had to throw it out. But I did have that Sting foam finger for a very long time. I've always been a huge Sting fan, always loved the guy. He's one of my favorites, probably in my top 5 or top 10 of all time favorites. So Sting and Rick Rude were in the main event in a steel cage. That was very awesome to see live. That was the only WCW live event I ever been to, was the WCW house show in 94. Hacksaw Jim Duggan was also on that show against, I think Hacksaw might have even worked against Triple H at the time. I don't remember. His name obviously was not Triple H in WCW. It was Paul Levesque or something like that. I don't remember his name in WCW. But anyways, he probably worked against Hacksaw Jim Duggan at the house show. And not the Hollywood Blondes. Stunning Steve Austin was on the house show also. I think against Brian Pillman. I don't really remember. But I do remember Steve Austin, Sting, Rick Rude, Triple H, and Hacksaw Jim Duggan were all at this WCW house show. And I do have one thing left from the WCW house show that I bought. I have to go get it real quick. I'll be right back. Obviously you can see what I have on. This is the wrestling mask I bought at the WCW house show. It says WCW on the side. It's pretty tight, but it still fits. It's ripped here, but it still fits. Got it in 1994 at a WCW house show. I thought I would share this with you. I'm going to take it off because it's hot as hell. So that house show I went to was very memorable. Very memorable. And I'm really glad I got to go to a WCW house show and see Sting live. Up next, I'm going to talk about an event I should have talked about in part 1 of 94, but I forgot to. ECW, the night the line was crossed event. It happened in ECW Arena in Philadelphia. It's called the night the line was crossed, and it had an epic, legendary, first time ever, I believe, that I know of in the United States, first ever three-way dance, first ever triple threat match happened in ECW. It did not happen in WWF or WCW. ECW, in my opinion, and as I know of, started the triple threat matches. And this was February of 94, was the night the line was crossed. It was not an ECW pay-per-view. They were not on pay-per-view until April of 97. This was just like a big event for the fans in Philadelphia to come to. And the legendary triple threat three-way dance, first time ever, legendary three-way dance, was between Terry Funk, Shane Douglas, and Sabu, and it was great stuff. It was legendary. They wrestled over an hour. The match went an hour time limit draw. It was legendary. Sherry got involved. She was Shane Douglas's manager at the time. Paul Heyman was Sabu's manager. He came out, knocked out Sherry with his cell phone. Drilled her in the back of the head. Sherry went down. Also on the night the line was crossed, you had Jimmy Superfly Snuka take on Tommy Dreamer. And he hit like 3 Superfly splashes on Tommy Dreamer. Tommy Dreamer did not quit. He kept kicking out. That was awesome and memorable. Also at the night the line was crossed, very crazy, insane moment. You had Mike Awesome take on JT Smith. JT Smith was on the outside of the ring, up against the guardrail. Mike Awesome dove off on top of him and almost broke his fucking back and almost broke JT Smith in half. It was insane, crazy spot where JT Smith really legitimately looked like he injured his back. His back bent all the way back on the guardrail from all the force of Mike Awesome coming down on top of him from over the top rope. That was just insane. It was just one of the most insane spots you'll ever see. The Mike Awesome JT Smith thing where his back got bent over the guardrail. It was shown on the ECW opening of their television show in 98, 99 for years and years and years. Probably even in 96 and 97, in 94. Their opening music video, the ECW theme song that kicked off the show in their opening video of highlights, basically Mike Awesome and JT Smith, that was always in the ECW highlight video to open their shows, that spot, and it was awesome. And then later on in that match, after Mike Awesome almost broke JT Smith in half, you had him try to do a big splash off the top rope and jump off the top rope, and the top rope snaps. It snaps, and Mike Awesome fell on his face, and the fans started laughing at him, chanting at him, "You fucked up, you fucked up." Another chant that was started in ECW, and a lot of people loved. They chanted "You fucked up" at Mike Awesome. He was not happy. He was pissed off, and then he just decided to powerbomb the referee. So he powerbombs the ref and leaves the ring, and the match is over. So those were really memorable moments from ECW the night the line was crossed. Paul Heyman was booking ECW at the time. He wasn't the owner yet, but he was booking, and he put on a hell of a show. That three-way dance between Sabu, Shane Douglas, Terry Funk is legendary. If you have not seen it, try to look it up on YouTube. From the night the line was crossed, 1994. Sabu versus Shane Douglas versus Terry Funk. Legendary three-way dance. Now I'm going to talk about WCW. Their first year of doing this pay-per-view. It was called WCW Spring Stampede pay-per-view event. Spring Stampede, first year of Spring Stampede, as I said, it was held on April 17th, 94 from Chicago. First match of the pay-per-view was Kevin's... No, that was not the first match. First match, I don't know if it was the first match. I'm going to just tell you the matches that were on the show and the results. The Great Muta defended. The Great Muta challenged Steve Austin for the U.S. title. The Great Muta loses to Steve Austin by disqualification. So Steve Austin retains the U.S. title. Up next, Sting defeated Rick Rude when Harley Race accidentally hit Rick Rude with a chair. And then Sting got the pinfall and defeated Rick Rude, and I believe he became the WCW International Champion. They basically had two world titles in WCW at the time, because I'm sure Rick Rude wanted to be a world champion, and other guys wanted to be world champion. When Ric Flair was the WCW world champion at the time, you had the other belt that was called the International Championship, and Rick Rude held it in the fall of 93 into Spring Stampede 94. So Sting, I believe, wins the international title, and then in June of 94, Clash of Champions, champion versus champion, international title versus the WCW world title. Rick, in a unification match, winner got both titles and unified them. Ric Flair was WCW world champ, Sting was international champ, and Ric Flair, as everybody knows, won the match and got the international title, was basically retired. Ric Flair got the international title back, and they just started calling it the WCW World title again. And they got rid of the old WCW World title, which was a way smaller, lame-looking belt. So Flair defeats Sting in a unification match. And then a month later, Ric Flair would lose the world title to Hulk Hogan in Hulk Hogan's first WCW pay-per-view, Bash at the Beach in 94. Back to Spring Stampede. Up next was Buckhouse Buck, whatever his name was, Buckhouse Buck, defeats Dustin Rhodes in a bunkhouse match. Whatever the hell that was. It was like a street fight, basically. Television champion Lord Steven Regal wrestled to a 15-minute time limit draw with Brian Pillman. That was a good match. Up Other matches, Johnny B. Bad defeated Diamond Dallas Page. In other matches, World Tag Team Champions, the Nasty Boys, defeated Cactus Jack and Max Payne in a Chicago street fight. So the Nasty Boys retained the tag team titles. In the main event was a continuation of a legendary feud we saw in 1989 between Ric Flair and Ricky Steamboat would go at again at Spring Stampede in the main event for the WCW World Championship. They had a great match. It probably went 30 minutes. It was a very good match. Not as good as their matches in '89, but it was still very, very good, and they had great chemistry. They worked really well together, and it was awesome to see Flair versus Steamboat again in '94. It was awesome. If you see me turning my head like this, I'm checking the time on the video. So that was Spring Stampede '94. It was a good pay-per-view. It's worth watching on the network if you have the network. Now I'm going to talk about WCW Slamboree '94. It was called the Legends Reunion again, and it was from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And ECW was running in Philadelphia at the time. ECW was getting was getting known by a lot of people, especially in Philadelphia during Slamboree. There was a lot of ECW fans in the house. They were chanting you could hear, if you listen closely to Slamboree '94 in the crowd, you could hear a couple ECW chants during Slamboree. Slamboree Legends Reunion. They did their WCW Hall of Fame inductions again with Gordon Solie standing in the ring. In the first match of the pay-per-view, you had Johnny B. Bad defeat Steve Austin, U.S. Champion, defeat Johnny B. Bad, the challenger. That was a pretty good match. Terry Funk went up against Tully Blanchard in a Legends match. This was pretty awesome to watch. It wasn't long. It wasn't very much wrestling, but it was hard hitting. It was pretty hard. It got hardcore, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed seeing two legends get physical with each other. So it was decent. And you had Terry Funk and Tully Blanchard wrestled, and both got double disqualification. So double DQ in that Legends match. Up next, you had Larry Zbyszko pin the television champion Lord Steven Regal in a non-title match. The crowd loved Larry Zbyszko in Philadelphia. He was super over, and him and Regal put on a really good match. It was pretty damn good. And Larry Zbyszko, I believe he came out of retirement in '94, and I think he won a TV title sometime in '94, and he had a pretty good run. Coming back in '94, he looked good in the ring, and he had great matches with Steven Regal, did Larry Zbyszko. Up next, you had Dustin Rhodes again against Buckhouse Buck, and they were feuding part of '94. Dustin Rhodes defeats Buckhouse Buck in a bull rope match. After the match, or during it, you had Terry Funk run down the ramp and hit Dustin Rhodes with his branding iron in the forehead. Dustin Rhodes bladed and was bleeding. He's bleeding a lot. And officials had to carry Dustin Rhodes from the ringside to the back. He was hurt, obviously. I guess Terry Funk did that because he was a crazy wild man, and he never liked Dusty Rhodes or the Rhodes family. So he basically turned on Dusty Rhodes' son, Dustin. And after this Slamboree '94, Terry Funk would still work for ECW for a little bit on a couple shows. On Heat Wave '94. ECW Heatwave 94, Terry Funk and his brother Dory Funk Jr. took on Public Enemy in a tag team barbed wire match. That was awesome. That was hardcore. It was brutal, and it was awesome. That was in Heatwave, was either in June or July 94 when that happened. Maybe it was in August. I'm not sure. There was a lot of chairs. A lot of chairs were brought in the ring, I think, by Terry Funk or maybe the Public Enemy. A lot of chairs were laying in the ring, and I don't remember who won. I think the Funk brothers won it. That was a tag team barbed wire match right after Slamboree. And then at ECW Hardcore Heaven 94, I believe it was in May or June or July or maybe August. I'm not sure. But I know it was in summer of 94, or maybe in May of 94, was Hardcore Heaven, where you had the most insane, crazy, epic chair throwing thing I've ever seen in my life in wrestling, and will never see it again. The chair throwing incident in the ECW arena was at Hardcore Heaven 94, where I think Terry and Cactus, or Terry Funk, went like this with his arms, basically telling the fans, throw every goddamn chair in the ring that you have. I don't think Terry Funk thought the fans were going to start rioting and doing what they did, but they basically, every fan in the ECW arena threw their chair they were sitting on, their folding chair. They threw it in the ring, and it was crazy. It was just chairs raining down into the ring on top of the Public Enemy. I believe the Public Enemy was laid out in the ring because I can't remember. I think Cactus and Terry were a tag team against Public Enemy, or Terry Funk versus Cactus was one-on-one, and Public Enemy just ran in to attack them. So Public Enemy was laid in the ring, and they got covered in steel chairs. And during, when all the chairs were raining down, getting thrown into the ring, you had a ring announcer in ECW pick up the microphone and say, "Stop throwing the chairs." And then he said it again on the microphone. He said, "Please stop throwing the chairs. Stop it." Fans didn't listen. It was the ECW arena. The fans were hardcore, and they were taking control of the show. I'm sure it was the last match of the show, so they didn't give a damn if they were getting kicked out anyways. They basically filled the ring with chairs, and that was awesome. It was a great look to see all those chairs raining down, getting thrown into the ring from the audience. And for years and years on ECW television, again, for their opening highlight video of the show, they showed that moment with Terry and Cactus in the ring and every chair raining down in the ring. That moment was shown for years and years on their highlight video to open the ECW television show. If you ever watched ECW's television show, you saw it. Obviously you saw it, and all the chairs coming down. It's just epic to watch. If you have Hardcore Heaven 94 on DVD, watch it, and watch that moment again where the chairs come into the ring and get thrown into the ring. It's very fun to watch, and it's just unbelievable that even happened, but it did. What was I talking about? Oh, Terry Funk was in WCW at Slamboree, attacked Dustin Rhodes, joined Buckhouse Bunk, and Colonel Robert Parker. They became like a group and a tag team. Terry Funk and Buckhouse Buck basically became a team after Slamboree 94. And Terry Funk was working in WCW and ECW at the same time. But he stopped working for ECW probably in the fall of 94. He stopped. And then he'd come back in 95. So, Slamboree continues. After Dustin Rhodes was carried out, You had WCW World Champion Ric Flair defend the WCW Championship against a mystery opponent, and that Colonel Robert Parker had for him. And the mystery opponent was a former Horseman, Four Horsemen member Barry Windham. Took on Ric Flair to challenge him for the title. He obviously lost. And Barry Windham was pretty out of shape and really overweight in this match. He didn't look good. But whatever, I don't really care what he looked like. I'm just saying, when Barry Windham returned as a mystery opponent at Slamboree 94, he did not look in wrestling shape. Up next, you had Kevin Sullivan and Cactus Jack defeat the World Tag Team Champions, the Nasty Boys, in a hardcore tag team brawl. They went all over the building. They were jumping. Cactus dove off the stage and did his elbow drop. You had trash cans involved, frying pans involved, steel pans involved, canes involved, crutches, a lot of weapons were involved, steel chairs. Max Payne came out from behind one of the Nasty Boys and smashed a guitar over his head. That looked really stiff, like it hurt like a motherfucker. And I think Jerry Sags, the other Nasty Boy that got hit with the guitar, I think he legitimately got knocked out from it, because he's laid out in the ring for like over 5 minutes when the match was already over. And doctors were looking at him. I'm sure he got a concussion, because that guitar didn't really look like it was a setup, whatever you want to call it, a setup guitar that was just smashing a billion pieces like cardboard. It was probably a real guitar that he smashed over his head. Yeah, if it wasn't, it looked and it sounded real. So, Kevin Sullivan and Cactus Jack win the WCW Tag Team titles at Slamboree 94, and they would not have them long. They would lose them pretty fast after Slamboree. In the main event, Sting, he just won, or Rick Rude was still the international champion. And in Japan, Sting and Rick Rude had a match, and Rick Rude injured his back really bad. I don't know if he broke it. He may have. But Rick Rude injured his back really bad. His career ended before Slamboree 94 in Japan. Very sad. His career had to end because Rick Rude was great. I was a big fan of his. Still am a fan of his. And watching his matches on the network. Anyways, Rick Rude got injured really bad and had to retire. So the WCW International title, nobody had it. Sting was given the international title by the WCW commissioner at the time, Nick Bockwinkel, gave him the international title, and Sting decided that he wanted to fight for the title to win it. He didn't want to be handed it. So Sting took on Vader for the WCW international title. They always had great matches with each other, and Sting defeats Vader to win the WCW international title by pinfall. It was a great match. And it was a great end to Slamboree 94. Another good pay-per-view from WCW in 94. Super Brawl, their first pay-per-view, was okay. Spring Stampede was better. And Slamboree was even better. And Bash at the Beach, their next pay-per-view, would even be better because of the appearance of Hulk Hogan. Like Hulk Hogan or don't like him, I don't care. You gotta admit, Hogan coming to WCW gave WCW legitimacy and made them look like they were a top wrestling company to get Hulk Hogan on their pay-per-views. It was definitely a plus, and it was definitely gonna help WCW to get Hulk Hogan on their pay-per-views. And if you don't think WCW did the right thing by signing Hulk Hogan and bringing him in, even though he's like 43 years old or 42 or 41. I don't know his age in 94. He's 61 now, I think. So in 94, he's probably 40 years old or something. I don't know. Hogan was either 40 or 41 when WCW signed him. So he was not that old. But a lot of fans saw Hogan as an old WWF guy when he showed up in WCW and they signed him. WCW signing Hogan definitely was a great move for WCW to do, and for Eric Bischoff to get Hulk Hogan was huge. It was huge news in the wrestling business. And they had a parade after Hogan signed. They had a parade for Hulk Hogan coming to WCW. I believe it was at Universal Studios in Orlando, Florida, or somewhere. Some studio park, some amusement park in Florida is where Hulk Hogan made the announcement, and Mean Gene was there, and he said, Hulk Hogan, you just signed up, and get ready, or he said, fans, get ready for a wild ride. And Mean Gene was absolutely right, because especially in 95 when Nitro would start, we definitely were in for a wild ride as wrestling fans, between the Monday Night Wars and WCW and WWF going at it from 95 until 2001. But WCW, in my opinion, did not compete in 2000 or in 2001. Even in 99, they could not ever beat Raw in the ratings. So basically, at the end of 98, and I'm sure WCW still had great ratings in 99 for Nitros, but they weren't going to beat Raw. Raw was on top, getting like 6 million, 7 million people every Monday night. I don't know how many Nitro is getting, but they were not going to catch the WWF. But WCW had a damn good run when they signed Hogan up until the end of 98. Now I'm going to talk about Bash at the Beach, 94. This will be the last event I talk about in this part 2 video of 94, the year in wrestling. Bash at the Beach was held on July 17th, 1994. The first match of the pay-per-view was the television champion Lord Steven Regal defended, I believe the title was on the line, defended against Johnny B. Bad and defeats Johnny B. Bad. Big Van Vader and the Guardian Angel. The Guardian Angel was the big boss man, if you didn't know. They wrestled. Vader defeated the Guardian Angel by disqualification. I believe the Guardian Angel started using his nightstick and beating Vader. Or maybe that was at Spring Stampede. He beat Vader with his nightstick. And then Guardian Angel, I believe, got suspended by Nick Bockwinkel, the commissioner at the time, after he beat Vader with his nightstick in the ring. I think that was Spring Stampede. So Bash at the Beach. Vader defeats Guardian Angel by DQ. They were feuding at the time, but it was not that memorable. Up next, you had Terry Funk on another WCW pay-per-view because he was back, basically almost full-time with WCW. Terry Funk and Buckhouse Buck defeated Arn Anderson and Dustin Rhodes. Dustin Rhodes needed a tag team partner for this match before Bash at the Beach. He got Arn Anderson to team with him. And during this match, Arn Anderson, I believe, turned on Dustin Rhodes and turned heel, went back and joined Buckhouse Buck and Terry Funk. And this would set up the next pay-per-view, Fall Brawl, and the War Games match, because Arn Anderson was on a team with Buckhouse Buck and Terry Funk. So this set up Dustin Rhodes getting his team together, which would be part of Dustin Rhodes' team was his father. He returned for War Games was Dusty Rhodes Returned. At Fall Brawl 94, the next pay-per-view after Bash at the Beach 94. U.S. Championship, stunning Steve Austin defeated Ricky Steamboat, and this was the match, I believe, that Ricky Steamboat got injured his back really bad. He tried to rehab it. He probably could have returned, but he didn't want to return, so he retired in 1994 after Bash at the Beach 94. Ricky Steamboat did appear at Fall Brawl 94, the next pay-per-view, but I think he's still rehabbing his back. He probably thought he could return, but I guess he didn't want to. Or he thought it'd be too much of a risk, and I don't blame him for retiring. He did retire pretty early. I think he's in his early 40s. Ricky Steamboat probably could have wrestled until he was 50, and he would have been in great shape, but he decided to retire early because of the back injury. And back injuries are really bad and really serious, especially if you're a wrestler. Shawn Michaels had one. He was out of wrestling for 4+ years before he returned. Up next, you had Paul Roma and Paul Orndorff teaming up. They were the team Pretty Wonderful. They defeated Cactus Jack and Kevin Sullivan to win. Pretty Wonderful won the World Tag Team titles from Cactus and Kevin Sullivan. So Cactus and Kevin Sullivan only held the tag team titles for 2 months. And in the main event, WCW Undisputed World Champion Ric Flair took on Hulk Hogan, coming over from WWF. This was Hulk Hogan's first WCW pay-per-view, and they had him return to the main event. That was the right decision to put Hogan in the main event, because everybody wanted to see Hogan versus Flair. They never saw it on a WWF pay-per-view because WWF screwed up and did not put on Hogan versus Flair when they should have. But WCW capitalized when they brought in Hogan. They knew they were going to have him work with Ric Flair, and Ric Flair definitely helped getting Hogan to sign with WCW. This was a pretty damn good main event, pretty good match between Flair and Hogan. It went 21 minutes, 50 seconds. Hulk Hogan hit the big boot, big leg drop, 1, 2, 3. Crowd exploded in Orlando, Florida. Hogan's home state is Florida, so the crowd exploded. I believe his family was there. His ex-wife was there, I think in the front row, Linda. And I think Brooke Hogan was even in the front row. She looked very young, like 4 or 5 years old. Maybe even, I don't know how old she was. But she looked really young. She looked like she was there, and Hogan's other kid, Nick Hogan, was probably there too in the crowd. So Hulk Hogan wins the WCW Championship on his first pay-per-view in his first WCW match. Was it the right decision? I've heard from a lot of people, and they don't think Hogan should have won the WCW title his first match. Well, I disagree. I think it was the right decision to give Hogan the world title, because it just was. You'd probably get more fans from the WWF to tune in to WCW after Hogan won the world title, because they knew who Hulk Hogan was. Everybody on this planet probably knows the name Hulk Hogan. So WCW signing him and putting him over to win the world title was the right decision. And what else was I going to say? Oh yeah, Bash at the Beach. Hogan's first pay-per-view. I believe the buy rate was really big, and it was a biggest buy rate in WCW pay-per-view history. I believe 400 or 600,000 people ordered Bash at the Beach 94 to see Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair go at it. So it was obviously the right decision, and it was best for business for WCW to sign Hogan and to bring him in and to talk him out of coming out of retirement and joining WCW. I heard when Hogan signed, he was getting paid $10 million a year. Good for him. He made that kind of money. Good for Hogan that they would pay him that much. That's a lot of money to pay a wrestler. I don't think anybody in the WWE makes $10 million a year. Not even Cena or Brock Lesnar. I think Brock might make $5 million a year. I don't know. His contract, I'm just guessing. His last contract, I think, was $5 million. This contract, he has more dates he has to appear on, and he's going to work some house shows, so I don't know. The deal is probably worth more than $5 million, and Brock is probably making more money on this new contract than the old one. And Cena probably does make $5 million. I don't know. But Hogan was getting $10 million a year. Basically, every year he was in WCW. So he became a very, very rich man. I'm sure he was already really, really rich from his WWF days. WrestleMania 3, Hogan got a payday of $10 million, I heard. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's what I heard. So yeah, Bash at the Beach was a huge success because Hulk Hogan was on it. It got a lot of buy rates. It beat King of the Ring 94. King of the Ring 94, I think, had 250,000 buy rates. WCW Bash at the Beach had between 400 and 600. Maybe 700 buy rates. So Bash at the Beach kicked the King of the Ring 94's ass in buy rates. So it was a right decision to bring in Hogan to WCW, and he became the world champ. That's the end of my Year in Wrestling 1994 Part 2 video. I talked about some ECW, Night the Line Was Crossed, and ECW, Heat Wave and Hardcore Heaven, the matches that Terry Funk was involved in. And I talked about WCW, Spring Stampede, and Slamboree, and Bash at the Beach. Hope you enjoyed this video of the Year in Wrestling 1994 Part 2. If you watched it, thanks very much for checking it out and watching. I'll be back with Part 3 and probably the next day after this day. Peace out. Bye for now, everybody.